This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. The show starts with Deepak Joshi, K-State Agriculture Precision Specialist, as he explains how drones can be used for scouting crop fields and what he is currently evaluating. Justin Smith, Kansas Animal Health Commissioner, keeps today's show going as he discusses paperwork and testing for transporting animals, biosecurity reminders, and an upcoming event that brings a unique perspective to livestock health. K-State Extension horticulture expert Matt McKernan ends the show providing tips for selecting and planting warm season vegetables. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our show discussing the use of drones in crop fields for this time of year with K-State Agriculture Precision Specialist Deepak Joshi. Deepak, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Sylvie, for inviting me here.
Deepak, for this time of year for crop producers and crop fields, how are you seeing the use of drones be able to be used?
Thank you, Sylvie. That's a great question, actually. Nowadays, drones are transforming the agriculture and it can be used for many purposes, actually. So, for example, right now, our growers are in the early growing stage, early planting phase. So, drone right now, it can be especially used for the early season scouting, actually. Scouting the field to see what's the germination condition in the field. So, we can use these drones for any crop we want, like corn, soybean, sorghum, or whatever we're planting. So it can be used for all the crop and scouting the field for the early season so that we can make a better early decision.
And when you are scouting those fields, what are you looking for with the drone?
That's a good question. As I said, it depends on our objective, what we want to do. And early season, we scout for the plant germination and stand count especially. So right after the planting, we want to see what's a germination pattern in the field, and if there are any missing germination or if there are any gap in the rows, so that if we can find out early at the right time, we can make a replanting decision as well. So that's one of the main purpose for the early season scouting. And also it gives us the idea about what's our field look like, if there are any wet spot in the field, if there are any, how much crop residue we have from the previous year. So all those are really important information to the grower. Actually, if we have a too wet condition, maybe grower don't want to use their tractor or drive their tractor on those spot, actually. So it will impact their driving capability in the field, actually. So it can be used for many early season decisions.
Are there different types of imaging that can be used during this time frame?
Actually, that's a great question, actually. So, we recently put an article at the e-update, and we discussed about the two different images there. One is RGB, which is just like the same image that you can take a picture from your phone, actually. But the only difference is you are now taking the picture from the top of the sky for the aerial view, actually. And with the RGB image, as I said, it's just the same what human eye can see as well on the normal condition. So from the RGB image, you can see the soil condition, if there are any water spot there, if there are residue there, if there are any combine or tractor or irrigator track passes there, all those can be seen with the RGB image. And also the weed, actually, if we have an early season weed, so RGB image can be used to see those weed, actually. And another is a multispectral, which is more advanced than the RGB image. So with the multispectral, we can determine the NDVI map. So NDVI map is more detailed information, and it provides more information that human eye cannot see, actually. So with the NDVI, if the value range from 0 to 1, so higher NDVI or close to 1 means plant is healthy. There is more green crop in the early season, actually. So lower NDVI or close to zero means there is a bare soil, there is no crop in the field actually. So all these information can be very helpful using those two RGB and then NDVI maps.
And why might you suggest someone going to do drone scouting versus still manually going in and scouting fields?
Yeah, that's a very important. As I said, like early season scouting is very important to make an early season decision. If we make a right decision in the early season, we'll have a better yield at the end of the season. So it's important. And then main question, how to do the scouting. We have a big field, like one of the field was 150 acre. Can we walk all around every corner of that 150 acre? Actually, that's a question actually. So it's almost too much time consuming and also labor intensive work. Actually, if we want to scout manually, it's going to take almost your whole half day actually. But with a drone, we can fly drone and it can cover whole 150 acre in 30 minutes. And in 30 minutes, you have a whole picture of your field and you know what's your field condition. So using a drone is a very time effective, less labor consuming, and very high accuracy as well. But sometimes we have to make sure that using the drone image, if we find out some problem issue in the field, so we should go on those spot and just to validate that as well, doing the manual scouting sometime.
And for producers using drones, what are some barriers to entry or maybe things that are holding them back?
Yeah, actually, for it's a technology. Sometimes it can be using a technology, especially for the first time user, could be a challenge. So first thing, we need to get the FAA drone pilot license. That's required to use the drone for any commercial purpose. So and then also some challenge could be the image processing after you fly the drone actually. But we are here at K-State. We can help all the grower if they want to learn about how to process those images, and we also help them to collect the drone images from their field as well. So we are happy to help to use these technologies.
Deepak, you made a mention of the 150 acre field, and how long did that take you to go scout it with a drone?
If it's a nice day, like a no wind condition, if a less wind condition is nice day, it take me like around 30 minutes to fly and cover whole 150 acre actually.
So as we look forward for drones and our growing season, what are the next things that you'd be going out to scout with the drone?
As we started the growing season, so I'll be keep collecting and drone images from these field during the whole in season. So to monitor some additional issue as well, like if there is any nutrient deficiency in the plants later in the season, and if there any disease spot there, if there any insect damage on the field. So we will be monitoring the field throughout the growing season. It's not only the early season, but we can use throughout the growing season for identifying different issues in the field actually.
Deepak, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Selby. Thank you.
That was Kansas State University Agriculture Precision Specialist Deepak Joshi. Before we cut to a break, we're now going to be joined by Kansas Wheat's Gordon Clark with a recent wheat scoop.
I'm Gordon Clark, and for this week's Kansas Wheat Report, we'll be giving a nod to farmers just before harvest begins. Just before test cutting and the Kansas horizon turns from green to gold, there's an understanding across the plains that harvest is bigger than any one field. It is the product of months of risk, long days, uncertain weather, and generations of stewardship. And at the center of all of it is the farmer. Every part of the wheat industry depends on that moment. The trucks waiting at the elevator, the flour headed to the bakery, and the research happening in university labs, the export vessels loading grain at port, and the family buying a loaf of bread at the grocery store all begin with one decision made months earlier by a producer willing to plant a crop and believe in the season ahead. In Kansas and across the plains, wheat farmers carry a unique responsibility. They grow one of the world's most foundational foods while working against challenges they cannot control. Drought, freezes, disease pressure, volatile markets, and rising input costs. Yet year after year they plant anyway, not because farming is easy, but because feeding people matters. That commitment goes well beyond harvest. The wheat chain is often described as an industry, but in reality, it's a network of people connected by purpose. plant breeders that spend decades developing stronger varieties, agronomists who work to solve production challenges in the field, millers and bakers all over the world that rely on the consistent quality of U.S. wheat. But none of it exists without producers. There are no test plots without farmers willing to try something new, no exports without grain in the bin, no flour without harvested bushels, no bread without someone willing to put a seed in the ground the previous fall and trust that rain will come, temperatures will cooperate, and the crop will make it to summer. That reality becomes especially visible this time of year. As combines begin preparing for harvest, there is an optimism in the air alongside uncertainty. Every season tells a different story. Some fields exceeded expectations, others fought drought, freeze damage, or disease pressure all spring long. Yet across the wheat belt, producers continue moving forward with the perseverance that defines agriculture. Wheat becomes more than a crop. It becomes a part of the story of rural America itself. That story reaches much further than Kansas. Kansas-grown wheat may end up in sandwich bread in Tokyo, noodles in Seoul, or flatbread in Africa or the Middle East. It may feed a family recovering from disaster or become part of a celebration meal halfway across the world. Wheat is one of the few crops that connects a Kansas wheat field directly to global food security. And that connection matters now more than ever. In a world facing population growth, geopolitical uncertainty, and increasing pressure on food systems, the work of wheat producers remains essential. Every acre harvested represents stability, nourishment, and the promise that food will continue reaching tables around the globe. As harvest is beginning, stay tuned to our channels for harvest reports. Kansas has already seen some test cutting this week. We plan to begin our reporting on Wheat Harvest 26 on Tuesday, May 26. If you see a farmer today, tell them thanks. For Kansas Wheat, I'm Gordon Clark.
If you'd like to find more from Kansas Wheat, you can do so by going to their website, kswheat.com. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our show talking about livestock care and protection as we start summer, and there are a few different events happening with Kansas Animal Health Commissioner Justin Smith. Justin, thanks for joining us today.
Not a problem. Good morning. Glad to visit with you.
Justin, as we're thinking today, wanting to start off with maybe people going to shows and what they might need to be doing, and what is some paperwork, especially if they're crossing state lines, livestock showers should be doing?
Obviously, this is the beginning of show season and some of the things that are out there. And in conversations with other state veterinarians, that is going to be a priority of this year, is to make sure that our folks have the right paperwork when they're crossing state lines. And so I would encourage folks to get with their veterinarian, particularly if they're going across state lines, get with their veterinarian, get that proper certificate of veterinary inspection and any permits that may be required by that state. The other thing I would caution people with is that keep your ears open. I mean, just for the simple fact that we've got some disease things going on out there that potentially could impact travel across state lines. One of those is vesicular stomatitis. We've had that here in Kansas in the past. It's been 5-6 years ago since we had an issue with that, but they have found it in a couple other states. And so based on that, there will be some states that may implement some increased movement requirements to move into their state. So just keep your ears open. The other one's New World screwworm. I mean, if we happen to get it this summer, there's going to be some increased requirements on moving animals across the nation through states and different things of that sort. So just be aware of that. But yeah, I would caution you to really get with your veterinarians and work that out and get that certificate of veterinary inspection as you start to move from show to show.
And if people haven't been showing for a while or needing to take animals across state lines, is most of that process online now with your veterinarian?
It is that. There is couple different resources that your veterinarian can tap into regarding whether they have memberships of different ones. But yeah, there's different things on our website. InterstateLivestock.com is a great resource to where our states are really trying to keep up our current regulations on, so your veterinarians can tap into those. But yeah, there's several resources they can tap into.
And specifically looking at horses real quick, anything that we should be keeping an eye on for them?
Most definitely, and in particular here in Kansas, we did initiate a new rule a year ago. So any exhibition horses in the state of Kansas are required to have a negative Coggins test. And so they need to know that. That's a test that you can do. It's a once-a-year test. And so I would encourage you to get that done sooner than later. Just if you have plans to go to the 4-H fair or go do some exhibitions or across state lines, you got to have that. So I would encourage you to do that as well. The other thing is that we have disease issues within our horses as well, and the one that last fall, the scare that kind of reminded us that was there of equine herpes myeloencephalopathy, again tends to be a disease of populations, and so as we come together and expose these horses to each other, there is that potential. It doesn't run rampant, and fortunately, we were able to get it under control out of the Texas issue down last fall. But just be aware that that's out there. If you have some signs in your horse that doesn't look normal, whether it's neurological signs or the horse is just off, get a hold of your veterinarian, and sooner the better on any of those kind of diseases, but particularly AHM.
And on the thought of wanting to be aware of things, anything for West Nile virus for this year?
Well, obviously, it is probably going to rear its ugly head again. We typically have that issue coming up in later summer, typically August, September. But it is a mosquito-borne, and I would imagine that we're going to see an onslaught of mosquitoes here in the near future. So with that said, West Nile is always a concern. But the fortunate thing is there's a really good vaccination for West Nile. And so I would encourage folks, again, to get with your veterinarian, get on a vaccination program, and get your horses boosted for West Nile.
And going from mosquitoes to ticks, any concerns with them for livestock?
Most definitely. This is looking to be a bad tick year. I mean, we've seen huge onslaughts of ticks already, is what I'm hearing is reporting. And so the ticks are truly going to be a problem, I think, this year. Just based on we had a mild winter, we didn't get a lot of kill off on those ticks. And ticks have a cadre of diseases that they can transmit and that type of thing. So, yeah, I mean, there's a multitude of diseases, and you're not any more prone to that. Just use the proper preventative. Make sure that your pets and everything have got the preventative. That's the nice thing about today is that there's some products out there that do a really nice job of preventing tick bites and treating tick bites and that type of things and incursions. So again, get with your veterinarian. There's some really good products out there. Our livestock are a little more problematic in the fact just because of where they're at and in the pastures and stuff like that. But just keep an eye on them and make sure that, if the tick load gets too heavy, that you're doing the proper things as far as trying to treat them and prevent some of that.
And thinking through things that are happening this summer, middle of June, the World Cup is coming to Kansas City. And while it doesn't really feel like it has a strong agriculture tie when you first think of it, why is it something that you've been in conversations with others about?
Well, I think the big thing is it's such a unique event across our state as well as the nation in that. But also that comes with it is a huge onslaught of international visitors and international travelers that tend to follow that event. We know that those folks are coming into the Kansas City region. Kansas City is one of the host cities. And so, I think I've seen numbers that they expect, close to 600,000 people, at some of these events that's going to be showing up in Kansas City. The other thing is that it's such a long event. It lasts for, a little over a month, I think and all in all. So the time span that these people, come, whether they're players, whether they're team support, or whether they're just fans. And frankly, I understand there's a lot of fans that travel with these teams and follow these teams. So I think what they bring, and they're coming from all over the world. And so they're going to bring their own unique disease risk to us, whether they bring their own food or that type of thing is something. So I think we need to be aware. I have to imagine there's a lot of folks that have interest in how the American farm community looks and how they operate. And so the length of time that they may be here, that, our folks maybe get presented with the fact of, hey, can I come out and look? Or even somebody just stopping by and looking. And so just be aware of it, know it, put the proper biosecurity places in plan, and just know that, we want them to understand American agriculture, but at the same time, we don't want to put us at risk for somebody that just doesn't understand or doesn't know. And so, put those proper places in place as far as visitors and entertain them, but at the same time, don't undo yourself to extra risk.
And what are a few reminders when it does come to biosecurity measures?
Well, the big thing is like I said, if you have your facilities, make sure that the visitors just don't have free access to them. If they are going to come on site, make sure that they are not wearing boots that they wore in their own pens at home or on their own trailer and that type of thing. So make sure that they've got the proper PPE, if you want to say, if you have to provide them boots or shoe covers or something of that sort. But if you are exhibiting animals and you happen to take your animals to a show or whatever, just maintain some separation, as much separation as you possibly can. But probably the big thing is when you return home, make sure you isolate those animals. You don't know what they were exposed to. And so, isolate them for a couple, 3 weeks and just make sure that they're not hiding something that they're going to affect your entire herd with.
Are there things that could live on people's shoe if they're traveling internationally and still be alive and cause issues in the U.S.?
Well, there is. And so, one in general is African swine fever is one of the diseases that we deal with. That virus is very, very tough. And so if they have a pair of shoes that they have and they've gotten soiled or they've gotten contaminated with that virus, if they haven't done the proper thing and it's within, and them shoes happen to be in an environment that allows that virus to live, whether it's in a crevice of the shoe and there's manure or feed material or whatever in there, yes, that virus can be a potential opportunity. Any of the viruses we deal with, FMD as well. FMD is not as hardy as a virus as African swine fever, but it has the potential of being transmitted within our clothes and our shoes, within our nasal cavities and that type of thing. It doesn't affect us, but it has the opportunity to be carried by us.
Any concerns if people are, per se, maybe bringing their pets?
Well, most definitely. Those pets as well can be a vector for some of the different diseases that may be in their country, whether it's a disease that actually affects that pet or just as a carrier. Did that animal eat a product at home that had the virus in it and now it's coming over here and potentially has the opportunity to spread that soiled bedding and or themselves being a potential vector. So there is that potential of that type of deal. There are some countries that Kansas City is going to host that we consider a high risk country for rabies. And so they have rabies in their country and so as those pets come over, we have to make sure that they have the proper vaccination prior to ever getting on that plane. That's part of USDA's import requirements and inspection processes to make sure those animals have the proper vaccinations for any endemic diseases they might be dealing with.
If people are wanting to find out more information from the Kansas Department of Agriculture, how can they do that?
Well, definitely our website is the place to start at www.agriculture.ks.gov is a great place. I would also, if from a international perspective, if you have some desires, USDA's got some great resources on their website as well. But the movement papers, the movement requirements, and that conversation, disease opportunities, reach out to our website and start there by all means. And then, feel free to give us a call. But I also would point you to your local veterinarian because they're a great resource for you as well.
Justin, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Hey, no problem. Thank you for the time. And good luck this summer.
That was Kansas Animal Health Commissioner Justin Smith. I will link the resources that he mentioned in today's show and today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back.
Welcome back, and thanks for joining us on Agriculture Today. Along with Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. It should now be safe to start planting warm season vegetables like tomatoes, peppers, and melons in all areas of the state. K-State Extension horticulture expert Matt McKernan offers some tips for selecting and planting warm season vegetables. Matt, when it comes to planting warm season vegetable crops, are there certain types of vegetable crops that are maybe most often planted in Kansas?
Yes. When people think about warm season vegetables, I think the first thing people think about is our tomatoes and our peppers. Those are often the key warm season vegetables that a lot of people are excited to plant, but it really expands way beyond that. We have lots of other crops like green beans, cantaloupe, squash, melons, pumpkins. A lot of these plants are going to be warm season vegetables that can be planted now and throughout the summer months.
We had some potential weather that may have caused some problems earlier on in the growing season. Is this something that we can check for?
Yes. With this spring, we've had a lot of really interesting weather. Some parts of the state have experienced some late season freeze and frosts in the early May time frame. and a lot of areas of the state have also had some pretty damaging hail. So when we're thinking about our warm season vegetables, now is really the time that we're getting a lot of these started. And if these plants suffered significant damage, whether it's from cold or hail, strong winds, now is also a really great time to consider replanting those vegetable crops in order to make sure that we have a really good, healthy plant going into the growing season that's going to be productive and yield us good results. When we're evaluating plants for hail damage, for example, as long as we still have good leaf coverage on the plant, usually those plants will be able to outgrow any hail damage that they experience, any tattered leaves or leaves with holes. Some areas of the state have pretty significant hail, and so when you're left with just stems or twigs, often those plants are going to be better off being replanted rather than trying to coax those damaged plants out of their injuries.
Is there a trick then maybe to picking out healthy plants if you're going to be purchasing plants?
Yes, when we're purchasing healthy plants, we really want to start by evaluating what does the root system of that plant look like. And so we want to typically place our hand over the potting soil and the root ball, typically sliding the stem of the plant between our fingers so that the stem of the plant is between our fingers and the palm of our hand is over the root ball. We'll flip that pot upside down, loosely squeeze the sides of the pot to release the pot, and then that pot should slide straight up and off of that plant, exposing the root system. If we see a lot of white, fibrous, healthy roots, that's really going to be a healthy, actively growing plant and a plant that's going to transplant well when we get it home and plant it in our gardens. If we see plants, however, that have minimal roots, maybe those roots don't reach all the way to the bottom or aren't covering all four sides of the root ball, ideally we want to keep looking and keep shopping for maybe plants with a stronger, healthier root system. We can also evaluate the above ground portion of those plants as well by looking for plants that have dark green color, that are typically short and compact and dense, often with multiple side branches, rather than plants that are maybe tall and leggy and likely to flop over once we get them planted outside.
Do you maybe have some best practices tips for planting those warm season crops?
Yeah, when we plant our warm season crops, we want to make sure that we take time to amend our soil before planting, and whether that's incorporating fertilizers or adding organic matter to the soil, maybe even adjusting our soil pH based on a soil test recommendation. All of those things should be done before we put the plants in the ground. When we get ready to dig the hole, we want to make sure that we dig a hole that's 2 to 3 times the size of whatever pot size that we're planting in order to kind of loosen some of that surrounding soil and allow us to lay the roots out into that hole as we plant it. If we have a healthy plant with a lot of fibrous white roots, we typically want to tease those roots apart as we pull them out of the plot and before we put them into the soil in order to, again, be able to lay some of those roots out into the surrounding soil so they can start to absorb some of that surrounding water rather than just continuing that circling pattern that they have when they're planted in the pot. Once we have the plants in the ground and soil covering that hole back up, we really want to make sure that we water thoroughly and really watch the watering needs of our plants for the first several weeks as those root systems establish into that surrounding soil.
That's K-State Extension horticulture expert Matt McKernan with tips for selecting and planting warm season vegetables. To learn more, contact your local extension office. And that'll do it for this edition of Agriculture Today. For Shelby Varner, I'm Jeff Wickman. This is the K-State Radio Network.